The Mad Goose in the Tiger Forest, Part 1. Chinese Folk Tale. Hulin was a little slave girl. She had been sold by her father when she was scarcely more than a baby, and had lived for 5 years with a number of other children in a wretched houseboat. Her cruel master treated her very badly. He made her go out upon the street, with the other girls he had bought, to beg for a living. This kind of life was especially hard for Hulin. She longed to play in the fields, above which the huge kites were sailing in the air like giant birds. She liked to see the crows and magpies flying hither and thither. It was great fun to watch them build their stick nests in the tall poplars. But if her master ever caught her idling her time away in this manner, he beat her most cruelly and gave her nothing to eat for a whole day. In fact, he was so wicked and cruel that all the children called him Black Heart. Early one morning, when Hulin was feeling very sad about the way she was treated, she resolved to run away, but, alas, she had not gone more than 100 yards from the houseboat when she saw Black Heart following her. He caught her, scolded her most dreadfully, and gave her such a beating that she felt too faint to stir. For several hours she lay on the ground without moving a muscle, moaning as if her heart would break. Ah! If only someone would save me, she thought, how good I would be all the rest of my days. Now, not far from the river there lived an old man in a tumble-down shanty. The only companion he had was a goose that watched the gate for him at night and screamed out loudly if any stranger dared to prowl about the place. Hulin and this goose were close friends, and the slave girl often stopped to chat with the wise fowl as she was passing the old man's cottage. In this way she had learned that the bird's owner was a miser who kept a great deal of money hidden in his yard. Chang, the goose, had an unusually long neck, and was thus able to pry into most of his master's affairs. As the fowl had no member of his own family to talk with, he told all he knew to Hulin. On the very morning when Black Heart gave Hulin a beating for trying to run away, Chang made a startling discovery. His lord and master was not really an old miser, but a young man in disguise. Chang, feeling hungry, had slipped into the house at daybreak to see if any scraps had been left from the last evening's meal. The bedroom door had blown open in the night, and there lay a young man sound asleep, instead of the graybeard whom the gander called his master. Then, before his very eyes, the youth changed suddenly into his former shape and was an old man again. In his excitement, forgetting all about his empty stomach, the terror-stricken goose rushed out into the yard to think over the mystery, but the longer he puzzled, the more strange it all seemed. Then he thought of Hulin, and wished that she would come by, that he might ask her opinion. He had a high regard for the slave girl's knowledge and believed that she would understand fully what had taken place. Chang went to the gate. As usual, it was locked, and there was nothing for him to do but wait for his master to rise. 2 hours later the miser walked out into the yard. He seemed in good spirits, and he gave Chang more to eat than usual. After taking his morning smoke on the street in front of the house, he strolled around it, leaving the front gate ajar. This was precisely what the gander had been expecting. Slipping quietly into the road, he turned towards the river where he could see the houseboats lined up at the wharf. On the sand nearby lay a well-known form. "Hulin," he called as he drew near, "wake up, for I have something to tell you." "I am not asleep," she answered, turning her tear-stained face towards her friend. "Why, what's the matter? You've been crying again. Has old Black Heart been beating you?" "Hush! He's taking a nap in the boat, don't let him hear you." "It's not likely he would understand goose talk if he did," replied Chang, smiling. "However, I suppose it's always best to be on the safe side, so I'll whisper what I have to say." Putting his bill close to her ear, he told Hulin of his recent discovery, and ended by asking her to tell him what it all meant. The child forgot her own misery at hearing his wonderful story. "Are you quite sure there was not some friend of the miser's spending the night with him?" she asked gravely. Yes, perfectly sure, for he has no friends," replied the gander. "Besides, I was in the house just before he locked up for the night, and I saw neither hair nor hide of any other person." "Then he must be a fairy in disguise," announced Hulin wisely. "A fairy? What's that?" questioned Chang, more and more excited. "Why, you old goose, don't you know what a fairy is?" and Hulin laughed outright. By this time she had forgotten her own troubles and was becoming more and more amused at what she had heard. "Hark!" she said in a low tone, and speaking very slowly, "a fairy is," here she lowered her voice to a whisper. The gander nodded violently as she went on with her explanation, and when she had finished, was speechless with amazement, for a few moments. "Well," he said finally, "if my master is that kind of man, suppose you slip away quietly and come with me, for, if a fairy is what you say he is, he can save you from all your troubles and make me happy for the rest of my days." Putting his bill to her ear, he told Helene of his recent discovery. "I wonder if I dare?" she answered, looking round fearfully towards the houseboat, from the open scuttle of which came the sound of deep snoring. "Yes, yes, of course," coaxed Chang. "He gave you such a beating that he won't be afraid of your taking to your heels again very soon." Hurriedly they went to the miser's compound. Helene's heart was beating fast as she tried to decide what to say when she should actually stand before the fairy. The gate was still partly open and the two friends entered boldly. "Come this way," said Chang, "he must be in the backyard digging in his garden." But when they reached the vegetable patch there was no one to be seen. "This is very strange," whispered the gander, "I don't understand it, for I have never known him to grow tired of work so early. Surely he cannot have gone in to rest." Led by her friend, Helene entered the house on tiptoe. The door of the miser's bedroom stood wide open, and they saw that there was no one either in that room or any other room of the miserable cottage. "Come. Let's see what kind of bed he sleeps on," said Helene, filled with curiosity. "I have never been in a fairy's room, it must be different from other people's rooms." "No, no. Just a plain brick bed, like all the rest," answered Chang, as they crossed the threshold. "Does he have a fire in cold weather?" asked Helene, stooping to examine the small fire hole in the bricks. "Oh, yes, a hot fire every night, and even in spring when other people have stopped having fires, the brick bed is hot every night." "Well, that's rather strange for a miser, don't you think?" said the girl. "It costs more to keep a fire going than it does to feed a man." "Yes, that's true," agreed Chang, pruning his feathers. "I hadn't thought of that. It is strange, very. Helene, you're a wise child, where did you learn so much?" At that moment the gander turned pale at hearing the gate slam loudly and the bar thrown into place. To be continued.